Welcome to Wired to Lead, the podcast where neuroscience meets leadership. Hi, I'm Julia Lefebvre, and each week we're going to explore how our brains impact our behavior and how we can rewire our brains so that we can lead with clarity, confidence, and impact. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wired to Lead. I am so excited that today our guest is Ron Diamond. Ron is the founder and chairman of Diamond Wealth and a leading voice in private market investing, and family office innovation. He's a TEDx speaker and an educator at top universities. He chairs Family Office World Media and in his spare time serves as an influential advisory I'm going to say that over. And in his spare time, he chairs Family Office World Media and serves in influential advisory roles in academia, business, and philanthropy. So, Ron, it is so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Well, we're just going to jump in, and I always start with just inviting our guests to tell us a little bit about your leadership journey. You know, Wired to Lead is really we're exploring who the leaders are and some of the experiences that led them to where they are now. So tell us about leadership in the world of Ron Diamond.
Well, didn't go as planned, and that's probably true with most people. I had graduated from Northwestern, and I got a job at a firm called Drexel Burnham, which at the time was the most profitable firm on Wall Street. And I was there for 2 years, and the firm went bankrupt. It was like Goldman Sachs on steroids. And I was 24, so I just lost a good job. I didn't have any stock options or anything, but I'm watching these men in their 60s like cry. And in 1989, that didn't happen. And many of them lost most or all of their money. So my takeaway from and it was a very surreal scene. I could still remember, it was imprinted on me. I could remember a woman with big green glasses. I could remember fragrances and scents and body motions. And my takeaway from that was that I would always be loyal to people, like extremely loyal to people, but I would never, ever, ever be loyal to a company. Because if this can happen to Drexel, this can happen to anybody. And then you go down the list. You could look at Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and Salomon Brothers and Kidder Peabody and First Boston and on and on and on. So that's really how I started. I didn't really start as an entrepreneur. I was kind of forced into it because I was very disillusioned when the most profitable firm on Wall Street went bankrupt, and we were really not given much advance notice.
And you were kind of left high and dry. It's kind of like you had all of these aspirations and I'm sure expectations, and to meet that life lesson that early in your career had to have been, just like you said, disillusioning.
Yeah, it was. It was a hard lesson in life. I'm in retrospect, I'm glad it happened, but at the time, it changed my perspective on, again, people. I'm extremely loyal to people, but I would not be loyal to a company based on what happened.
Yeah. So it's so interesting to me, it seems like even at 24, you're learning this lesson. And I'm curious were there things earlier in your life that kind of cultivated this idea that, uh, that people matter and organizations, can serve that greater purpose, but people need to matter more.
Well, I could speak to the people matter part of it. Yeah, look, at the end of the day, relationships, life is all about relationships. Period. Full stop. There was a TED talk. I love TED talks, and there was a TED talk by Dr. Robert Waldinger, um, and he studied 250 students from Harvard University and 250 of the poorest students in Boston, starting in 1936, and the study's still going on. And basically, what he did is he wanted to follow their lives from the very beginning to and several of them are still alive. And what he found was that some people went from down here up here, some people went from up down. But one of the things that he found was the key to a successful and meaningful life was having some very important relationships. You don't have to have 100 best friends; you could have two. But the relationships is really what matters, and I think that's the way humans are wired. So I've always been a huge believer in that, and I've always been a people person, and I try to find the good in people, and I'm typically good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think your dog agrees. He's like, yes.
His name is and he's a year old, and he's a lot of work.
He's like, don't forget about me. Pets matter too.
And
Yep.
also, I should add, I really think highly of my dog Percy.
Good. Okay. Well, I know everyone is now wondering what kind of dog you have and
Standard
what
poodle,
Percy looks like. Sorry, what did you say?
standard poodle.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I think the research that you're referring to is now a book, right? Is it called The Good Life? Um,
Yes.
and I've read that, and you're right. The stories are amazing. That those with money and power and success in their careers didn't necessarily rank higher on the happiness scale than those who had really connected relationships. So that makes sense.
And it's interesting. I mean, the most popular at Harvard Business School, which is arguably one of, if not the best business schools in the world, the number one class, it's not on private equity or venture capital. It's a class taught by Professor Arthur Brooks on happiness. Go
Because
figure.
at the end of the day, that's what we're all really searching for.
We're searching for happiness and we're searching for meaning.
Yeah. So you're a businessman and you have been extremely successful in the business world. And how have you integrated these values into the way you've built your companies?
It's a great question. It happened over a period of time. It wasn't like one moment in time. It was one of the things that I think would um, be an example of this. We have a thing in our house where if you call three times, it's an emergency. Okay, so I've got two beautiful daughters. Zoe's 24 and Bella's 21. But this was, 15 years ago, so maybe Bella was like 5 or 6 years old. And I'm in a meeting with a very large, multi-billion-dollar family office, and I get a phone call, so I just ignore it. And I get a second phone call, so I just ignore it. And I get a third phone call. So I said, okay, in my kind of heart, because I'd never gotten the third call. And you think maybe
Yeah.
you're whatever. So I say, I've got to leave the meeting. There's an emergency. I didn't even know what it was. And I call my daughter. I said, what's up? I said, I didn't know if she was in the hospital or whatever. And she said, well, Dad, what are the five most important things in life? I'm like, what's the emergency? And she's like, no, no, I have got to get this done like in the next hour. And she's 7. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I was relieved. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was pissed. And I came home and I explained to her, okay, an emergency is this, not that. And so she had me, so I went over that and we went, I was relieved and everything, but she said, I need help with this. I helped her with the project. So for her, I don't even remember, I remember some of them. She wanted to be a good listener. She wanted to be a good little sister. She wanted to have a lot of friends. She wanted to be popular. And I think she wanted to have a lot of candy. I think those were her 5 things. Then she flips it on me as only a kid could do to a parent. She's like, "What are your 5?" Well, whatever. I don't know, and I just ignored it and ended the conversation. Well, the next day, the same thing. She's like, "What are your 5?" I don't know, and just changed the conversation. And she did this to me for like 2 weeks. She's like, "I did it, you do it." So finally, after like a month, I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So I talked to my wife about it, and I was just gonna just give her 5 things, give it 5 minutes of thought, whatever. But I really thought about it because it was actually a fairly profound question from a 7-year-old. So I really, it took me about 2 weeks to come up with this. I'm like, okay, if I have 5 things, what are the 5 most important things to me? So I thought about it and a lot and reflected upon a lot. And I wrote down in order love, gratitude, attitude, balance, and laughter. Now, those are for me, love to me transcends everything. Gratitude, I think that people in general aren't so great at. It's something you have to work on. Um, I and you and most people have 10 things that are wrong with them and a bunch of stuff that's right with us. And we focus on the negative. I think that's how humans are wired. But there's so much to be grateful for. So I think gratitude was number two. Um, Attitude, I think, is key. You go to I go to the Starbucks, and this one woman is just like the happiest woman ever, and I just like to get my coffee from there, and it makes a big difference.
You get
Um,
more than coffee, I imagine, every
it
time you go
does,
in there.
and there's people that you see out there that are just like they've got an energy about them, and it's just like you just want to be around them. I can't explain. It's not rational. The fourth one was oh, balance, and that's a challenging one. How do you balance? You're super ambitious. You want to do really well. You want to work really hard. You also love your family. You want to spend more time with your family. You've got a good group of friends. You want to do that. You're philanthropic. You want to do that. So how do you balance that? And most of us, again, when we're younger, we focus on, many of us focus more on our career, and then we let certain things slide. And I think as you get a little bit older, you change that. And the last one is laughter, because I just think that um, I, I think you have to get through this life. You just have to you have to laugh, otherwise it's just too serious.
I love that. Okay, so we're going to unpack a few things in there because, first of all, you said we're wired for the negative, and because we're, excuse me, talking about how our brains are wired, you're right. Neurologically, we are wired to focus on the negative so that we can protect ourselves. It's our body's survival mechanism. And it's why we have our fight or flight response system. And so, but what I hear you saying is that you're right. So many of us get so hyper focused on what's negative that we miss all of the positive. And so, in the work that I do, we narrow things down. Every behavior and response that we have can be traced back to one of four capacities. And one of those capacities is our capacity for integration, which integration is kind of a fancy word for wholeness. And our world is, as a whole, is beautiful, but it's also very broken. And so, am I able to interact in our world in a way that can handle and hold both of those without becoming overwhelmed? And same with interacting with people. People are both beautiful and broken. And can I, especially as a leader, interact with my teammates in a way where their broken parts don't overwhelm me? And so I hear you saying that gratitude is one of those practices that helps cultivate kind of this sense of just awareness of what's good around you.
Yeah, and also again, I've changed over as you get older. You change, your values change, your priorities change. um, I did a talk once on vulnerability. Brene Brown, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, and she
Mhm.
wrote the book about vulnerability. um, I used to think vulnerability was weakness when in we used to call them masters of the universe in 1990 when I was at Drexel Burnham. People would wear the suspenders, and you know you just put up this facade. You're just the they used to call them masters of the universe. So I would have, if you would have asked me when I was 24 to talk about vulnerability, there would be a 0.0% chance I would even contemplate that. But what I've learned is, and Brene Brown is a thought leader. She's not the only one, but she's certainly a thought leader.
Absolutely.
And I've learned that vulnerability is actually a strength, not a weakness. And if you know, it's cathartic. We're not all perfect. I lead a Tiger 21 group, which is kind of a peer-to-peer group like YPO, and I've got a picture of the iceberg, and you see the 5%, right? And that's what everyone sees. They see, okay, you have a nice house, you take nice vacations, your kids pay for whatever, but it's the 95% underneath. It's the sleepless nights, it's the anxiety, it's the are you going to make payroll this month? All of these things happen. So I think that we all are the full we're all the full thing. But most people just look at certain people and just see the top 5%, and they don't see the whole person. And I think the more authentic, the best compliment I ever received was not that I speak a lot. It was not that was a fabulous speech, maybe because I've never given one, but it was that was really authentic, and I didn't even take that as a compliment. But when I thought about it the next day, I'm like, that's a huge compliment because I talked about the failures I've had and things that didn't go right, and I didn't just talk here's how I got from here to here because it didn't go from here to here. And there's a lot of setbacks I've had and a lot of failures that I've had, and I talked about that, but it felt natural and it felt right, and I think that resonated.
Yeah. It aligns with what neuroscience is telling us about our brains, and that is that our first of all, our brains are constantly scanning the room for safety. And if people come in and, like you said, they're the master of the universe and they have everything together, then if I'm coming in knowing that I have some really broken parts, I'm not going to necessarily feel safe with that person. And so the opposite is true, that when somebody comes in who is successful, but is also very open and comfortable with sharing their weaknesses, then it models and it creates a culture and an atmosphere of safety.
We just did I helped to put together a family office initiative with some other people. I did it at Stanford first, then I did it at University of Chicago Booth, and we just had our conference last week. And one of the speakers was a behavioral psychologist. And what he did is there's 175 billionaires in the room. Most people didn't know one another. And the experiment was, okay, he's going to match everybody up one on one with people you don't know. And he asked three questions. I think one of the questions was, if you're going to be my friend, what do you need to know about me? And then I forget the second question, but the third question was, when's the last time you cried? Okay, so here you've got these uber successful, you know, businessmen and women, and people were felt really awkward. So they did it for like a half an hour, then we came back, and he did a study. He said, "What did everybody think like when I gave the assignment?" And everyone's like, "This is gonna suck. I do not want to do this. I feel very awkward, etc." But then afterwards, after he talked, he's like, "What did you guys think?" And the response was almost the polar opposite. Because once you see somebody say, "Yeah, well, the last time I cried was when my dad passed, or when my daughter was really really sick, or whatever it was," it humanizes the people. And then if you could see them as human, then you're willing to open up. So I thought it was a very interesting experiment to do amongst billionaire family offices at Chicago Booth. But it just shows that you don't have to put on this facade that like everything's perfect because it's not.
So it's not. And I think the higher you climb the corporate or professional ladder, the higher in leadership you are, the more the temptation and kind of the uh, just the idea that I need to hide this, or because now if people see this about me, they're going to think less of me, um, you know, in my business. And so I have to hide. And so, what a beautiful gift that speaker gave each one of those 175 leaders to say, you know what, in this space, we are not going to hold anything against each other. We're going to just be real. This is a place where you can be you You don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to be, you know, your title. And it's one of the things that I advocate in for leaders is that you've got to have a place where that happens regularly. That not just once a year at a conference with strangers that you're never going to be around, that there needs to be something that's regular because leaders are people, like you said, and they have to have that part of them cared for. And what will happen is it then all of the energy, you know, you mentioned that, you know, people don't see the anxiety, the sleepless nights. Well, all of those things are stacking up in your brains and they start keeping you, your energy is going toward survival instead of when you can have those types of interactions in a regular space and kind of release it, then it actually opens up your brain for more creativity, more innovation, more production. And, you know, it leaders just find a lot of joy in and a lot of improvement in what they're able to do.
No, I would completely agree with that.
Yeah. So you also mentioned that there are just some people that you want to be around. You know, you mentioned the Starbucks lady, and you said it's not rational at all. And I just want to affirm that you're right. So much of our human connection is not rational; it's subconscious, and so that's why it's so interesting to me that in most leadership development programs, we focus on rational improvement and growth. And this is needed. And I always tell people don't hear me say that that's not good, but there's very little about the irrational, about, and when I say irrational, really, I'm just referring to the subconscious. Because at the end of the day, it's our subconscious brain that drives us. If there's anything emotional, then our subconscious will hijack our logic. And I'm just curious um, if there's ever been a time where you have felt triggered and you knew that you were supposed to respond one way, but you responded with a fight or flight response, especially in your business experience.
Sure. No, that's a great question. Yes, it happened more when I was younger. I lead a couple of Tiger 21 groups, and one of the things we talk about is these are uber successful entrepreneurs. Um, they've achieved a great amount, at least from a business standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we were talking, we talked at the meeting. It's not about I was hesitant to even join the group because I thought like YPO, I thought these groups were like kind of pound your chest and talk about look how great I am. But
Wear your suspenders.
I never did suspend it. I was too
Okay.
little. Um, but we talk a lot about. I remember the very first meeting I went to, and somebody was talking about like his kid was almost committed suicide, and this is like the most successful real estate developer in the country. And then I'm listening to this, and I'm just like it. It made me respect him more as a person, and I was able to relate more to him because before I would just kind of put him up as a pedestal on the pedestal and sort of like, wow, this is the most successful real or one of the most successful real estate guys in the country, and he's just talking about one of his kids almost killed themselves, and I think by opening up that dialogue and by talking about that it just made it more authentic. Now, I'm not saying we could have it in every work environment. We could be that vulnerable. I mean, we've got NDAs, and it's not like you could be like
Right.
that. But I do think that people could be more authentic, and you could really see it. I mean, there are people who they're fake, and we sense it. Can't tell you how, but we just kind of sense it. And I think I tend to gravitate more towards people who are truly authentic and just like, how's your day? Not look everything great, but you know, good, really good day. Except my mom has got really bad dementia. whatever. So just being authentic, I think, makes a big difference. And this all comes back to relationships and how we're wired as human beings. And I think that that is a big factor in the success of a lot of companies, which is probably flipped from what it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I like the shift to more authenticity, and you've referred a couple of times to. I don't know why, but you can just tell when somebody is being fake, or I just call it, it's the plastic effect. It just feels like they're not human, really. And what research is showing is that they have hooked up people to the technology to measure brain waves. And when people are interacting with one another, this was just mind blowing that your right brain is sending signals beyond your skull. And so our brain waves aren't contained in our own heads. They're out, and so they're scanning the room, and they're meeting other brain waves that are coming at them. Well, that's at least our best guess on why you can tell without even a word being said if, someone's having a bad day, or if someone's not being real. It's because that subconscious part of them is projecting that out, and your brain is receiving that message. It really is phenomenal. And if you think about it, if you're the next time you're having a conversation with someone, notice which eye you focus on the most. It's a little bit hard on online conversations because we're flipped, and who knows. But if you're talking face to face to someone, notice which eye you tend to be drawn to. Um, Most of the time, you will notice that you're drawn to their right eye, that your right eye starts to naturally track with their right eye. And it's just one of the physical proofs that we get to see, oh, our brains are talking beyond what we even understand or could even imagine. So it
Look,
really is powerful.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're just intelligent mammals.
Yes. And we have the other piece, though, is that we have this capacity to rewire. And so that's the part that I think most leaders kind of feel like, well, you're either born with it or you're not. You're either wired to lead or you're not. And we've talked a little bit about some of your experiences that have kind of shaped you for leadership, and yet we all don't have perfect experiences that set us up for that. But what the neuroscience is telling us now is that you can access those subconscious memories that drive all of our behavior and actually replace them. It's phenomenal. So instead of having to create a new neural network around kind of a bypass, you can access the experiential felt memory, and through a new experience, replace what that experience felt like. So, in a way, you're almost updating your memory system, the computer of your brain. You're updating it to say, you know what, back when you were 5, you didn't have the capacity to stand up to that bully or whatever. And so you felt victimized. You felt like you had no voice. You were alone, and it felt traumatizing. But now you're an adult, and people want to hear your voice. They want to have you push back, and you're strong enough to. And so the brain has this incredible capacity to rewire itself, even at the subconscious level.
No, I think that that's very true. I mean, I remember when my kids were younger, I don't remember the name of the song, but it was basically the theme was what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I truly believe that. When you reflect back on your life, I think a lot of the things. the worst things that happened ultimately were growth experiences and ultimately led to good things. It's not that you hope bad things happen, but when they do, that's really what causes you to change. So I'm a big believer in um, grit. I think this generation now doesn't have the same grit. I'm concerned about the grit. I think this thing is the new smoking. I mean, these kids are spending 8 hours a day on it. The amount of anxiety, depression, suicide amongst kids, even 18 to 25, is off the charts.
Yeah.
And they're spending 8 hours a day. I mean, I'd come back from school, I'd play baseball, I'd play basketball, I'd play football if we had enough people, and we would just interact with humans. That's the way we're supposed to be. So we're doing a Zoom call, which is better than a phone call because I could physically see you, but it's much better to do it even in person. And now we're being so isolated, and I think that's just it's a huge concern for me, particularly for this generation because they call it the anxious generation. Um, it's due to the phone, and it's due to social media.
Yeah. And we've kind of bowed to the lie that we can't change it. And yet we all have these choices to choose. You know, you've said multiple times it all comes back to relationships, and that is exactly right. Our brains are made to thrive with relational connections. And so when we're on technology all the time in a non-relational way, it's almost like it's starving our brain. You know, they've done research that says that one of the primary core needs of all humans is is relational connection. Without it, you can die. And they did research with babies where that happened. And even if you don't die, for me, what it did was it created profound symptoms of anxiety in me because I was so isolated relationally. I didn't realize it. I had lots of friends and I had lots of coworkers, but I couldn't just be Julia. I couldn't be the good and bad parts of me. I had to show up a certain way. And that's what I just think that's so common for so many leaders.
I think also, yeah, no, that's a great point. I think as more and more, the older you get, the more and more bad stuff has happened. It could be to your parents, it could be to your friend, it could be to you, it could be
Mhm.
anything. Um, but you get thicker skin, right? But you also learn a lot about yourself, and it's not when everything's great and you just sold your company and you had five good things happen to you that is really where you're learning. It's really when five things pulled you down, and that's really the growth. So again, like, I don't hope bad things happen, but a lot of times when something negative is happening in my life, um, I almost embrace it right now because I know even though it sucks today, I know it's going to be great at some point down the road. I just don't know how, and that's how I look at it.
I'm going to clear my throat just because I'm joking now. This is real life, people. Um, yes. So now when I look back, okay, I'm going to hold just a minute.
Would it be helpful if I coughed and choked too?
Yes. Because then I'm not just by myself.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Thank you.
you look ridiculous, but whatever. It is.
And yet, it's just how we are.
It's how we are.
Oh, okay. I'm going to get my voice back. So, when I look back at my anxiety, it really is a gift because what it did was it was my body telling me, Julia, you have things that you've been ignoring for too long, and I want you to heal. And so I had to dig for for what that looked like. I thought, oh, I just need to exercise. So I started exercise. Well, I had been exercising, but I just got more frequent. I felt like, oh, maybe if I do yoga, that's more reflective, or maybe if I do meditation. I hired a spiritual director. I went through 3 therapists and I took medicine, and nothing would work. And I would be so frustrated in the middle of that because I thought, I can't live the rest of my life like this. And yet, what it did is it kept me looking for what would help. And that's when I found a coach who knew how to get to my subconscious brain, to some of those stored memories that were driving this feeling of you are not safe. And like I said, you can replace felt memories. And so we did the work to go back and replace what those memories felt like so that my brain was updated. My anxiety went from a 9.5, pretty debilitating. I was in the middle of my doctoral work and I just had to quit. I couldn't think. And in a year's time, I know, Percy, it's true. Um, in a year's time, my anxiety went from that to just a 1, like just what I would call just normal life anxiety, because I was finally dealing with the root issue, what was wrong. We have a saying that the problem is rarely
Hold
the
on.
real problem.
He's outsmarts me a lot. Hey, good.
Uh, but yeah, the problem is rarely the problem. My problem was not anxiety. My problem was unresolved issues that I had covered up and needed to replace. So as you are, moving into, okay, so you're running multiple companies. You are involved on several boards in the educational world. All of these things. What are your greatest challenges looking forward?
It's a great question. I try to focus on the positive rather than the negative. I have had challenges. My mom's got dementia. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of challenges. We all do. It's just most people don't talk about it. But once somebody says something, that's bothering them, it opens them up and they're more real. And then you could relate to them and you could be more real. So I think that's important. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think that I try not to worry. I'm good at I'm not great, but I'm getting much better at living in the present. I mean, most of the time, we as people focus on the future or the past, and we don't live in the present. You can call it Zen, you can call it whether it's meditation, yoga, however you get there.
Yeah.
And again, I just realize even if I'm doing my taxes, if I'm completely focused and in the zone, I'm good. I'm good. It's not that I love doing my taxes, but it's just sort of like if I'm able to be totally focused in the present, and that's something I constantly work on. It's very, very hard because we're wired to worry about the future and what's going to happen, or our brain is structured where we think about the living in the present. Like I'm doing this podcast with you right now. There have been times where my mind has slipped and thinking about other things, but the more I could focus on just this conversation, the better I feel. And I can't explain to you why.
Mhm. Well, and I think it comes back to the relational connection to be able to be here and with, and that's what truly fuels our brains. It really, it's not complicated, it's super simple, and yet it's really complicated to live out. And you brought up something that's, I think, really important, especially for leaders to hear, is that I hear you saying kind of there's this tension between, yeah, I have challenges, there's a bunch of things, but I don't want to dwell on it. I want to live in the present, and I want to, have gratitude. And I think sometimes, this kind of comes back to the idea of integration. The integration and having the capacity for that doesn't mean that we deny the bad stuff, because, like you said, when all those leaders got together and they got to share the challenges with others in a way that they were cared for. My guess is it actually helped to process the energy of that challenge and created more space for gratitude after that. And so I think that's one thing that people struggle with, is that we kind of think, oh, I have to kind of deny or just cover up my challenges. But the ways that our brain works is that if you can connect with a safe person relationally and share your challenge, then it dissolves the energy that's attached to that and creates a lot more space for gratitude, and then goes on to creativity and being able to focus and so on, and sleep for some people. So I always encourage leaders, like, make sure you have a place where, again, you can regularly be you without having to judge it. Part of being present is just acknowledging what is, um, without it getting really overwhelming.
It's interesting. When I was younger, it was almost a badge of honor, like, oh, I pulled an all-nighter. Got no sleep. I'm working 110 hours. That's not good. I mean, sometimes you have to pull an all-nighter, but
Sure.
I remember I forgot who it was, but there was a famous woman. I can't remember her name right now. But she had a nervous breakdown, and she was just getting lack of sleep, and like sleep. I try to get 7 hours of sleep a night, and I'm pretty good about it. Previously, I would try, to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep so I can get more work done. But the way your body is, you need sleep. It's super important. And so these are just things that are natural, and sometimes we overthink things, but sometimes you need to decompress, sometimes you need to rest, sometimes you need to take a step back. And these are not things that are taught at Harvard Business School, but these are just things that you need to learn and understand. And I think more and more people are starting to understand that. I think we're becoming more holistic in the business community, and I think there's been more and more studies showing that you don't have to just be that hard ass to be a successful person or boss. You could showing empathy and vulnerability are strengths that people would have thought were weaknesses 30 years ago, and I don't think they do now.
Yeah. You had mentioned that you thought vulnerability was weak when you first started, and
100%.
now you have changed that. How has your leadership changed, or how has that impacted how you lead?
It's just it's I don't think about it consciously. I just try to be as authentic as possible. So, people might look and say, okay, you've achieved A, B, and C, and you could check these boxes. And I've been very fortunate in a lot of ways in life. But it's just you have to look at it in totality. And I just think that I life's a journey, and what if our goal is self-actualization or whatever your definition of what you want to become. Um, we're here for like a blink of an eye. It's literally, I was bar mitzvahed like, it seems like yesterday. So I just think it goes by very fast, and we have to live in the present and stay focused, and people see if you're authentic, and they could tell. And the more authentic you are, the better you feel, because then you're not showing like you're faking something. So I, I don't know that it happened in one day or one specific event, but I just know that I've got many people would say a fairly warped sense of humor, which I find very funny. Sometimes I'm the only person in the movie theater laughing, um, but I go with that now. Some people are gonna look at like, okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, it's fine. It's just who I am. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
weird.
Well, and it is your fifth thing, most important thing in life, to laugh. So we have to, I mean, and really laughing with others is a way to connect. I mean, it's a very relational, joy giving piece or interaction.
Agreed.
So, as we're about out of time, so last question. Just curious, what legacy do you want to leave about your leadership?
It's a good question. Really, it comes back again to authenticity. It comes back to the five pillars: love, gratitude, attitude, balance, and laughter. That you incorporate that, and just to be real. Um, it's not, I want to have my name on a building. It's not, I think that's ego. I think a lot of charities are done. I mean, it's always good for charities, but most charities people give, it's either done for their ego or for tax purposes, and that's okay. It's better
Mm-hmm.
than not doing it. But I think that the best form of charity is to give anonymously, and I just think that um, you shouldn't care about how people, as long as you're true to yourself, be true to thyself, Shakespeare's famous quote.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that that's the legacy.
Yeah. Well, I can tell that all those things are well on their way because this has been such a sweet conversation. And you are a very authentic person. So I just appreciate your conversation and spending some time with me today. And just want to say thank you.
And don't forget, remember when you choked a couple times during the.
Okay. I was just thinking, you know what? That is the perfect example um of having an experience that could have gone two ways. It could have been uh I mean, you're turning it into funny. And it was hilarious. My kids laugh at me all the time because I do it all the time.
But your audience might think it was really bad.
They might think it's really bad, but because I had this experience, I'm like, this is the joy for me. So, anyway, love it. And thanks for the reminder. And next time I do it, I will think of you.
Just drink water. It's not hard.
Well, it was my tea, even. Tea's supposed to be good for you.
I'm drinking tea and I didn't choke.
Okay, you're right. It's the broken part of me. And I guess I'm just gonna have to be okay with it.
I again thank you for the time. It was terrific, and I love what you're working, what you're doing, and keep being you.
Thank you. All right. We'll see everyone later. Come back next time.
Bye.